As part of our continuing coverage on the social justice movement, we want to take a look at the entertainment industry.
Singer and actress Freda Payne has been entertaining audiences for decades, and she is joining us live this afternoon. Freda, hello. Thank you for joining us. We were rocking out to your music in the makeup room. It got us very excited and fired up for the newscast. Love it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And of course, with all the things that are going on in this world and with the George Floyd Memorial Service funeral I just finished watching, you know, we need a little bit of joy and happiness and good music. And music is healing.
It certainly is. Well, so you've been in show business now about 60 years. This year marks the 50th anniversary of your biggest hit, Band of Gold. Did you ever face difficulty in your profession because of the color of your skin, or hear about stories of those who came before you?
Oh, definitely. I heard stories about Lena Horne and stories about Pearl Bailey and Dinah Washington and people like that. And it takes me back to a time when I remember when I was working in Miami Beach, and I was working at a club. It was a black club, and at that time, black entertainers weren't really working at the main hotels such as the Fontainebleau and the Harry's American Bar and the Doral Beach. This was around the early 60s, but I have another memory when I was 17 and I was with my mother, and we drove from Detroit to Las Vegas, and I was going there to join the Duke Ellington Orchestra. I was 17 and Mr. Ellington had offered me a 10-year contract to sign with his band. But anyway, we drove from Detroit, we arrived in Vegas, we couldn't find a hotel room anywhere on the Strip, and every motel we drove to and entered it said outside on the neon, no, it said vacancy. But then we'd go in and they'd say, there's no vacancy here. So finally, after about 3 or 4 tries, we saw this African-American gentleman walking down the street. I think he was a janitor, and he said, he says, ma'am, don't you know they don't allow us colored folks to stay on the Strip? This was 1961.
Unbelievable.
And we were dismayed because my mother said, well, my daughter's here to work with the Duke Ellington Band at the Riviera Hotel. Aren't they staying at the Riviera Hotel? He said, oh, no, ma'am. They got to be staying over on the west side at Dr. West Motel. It's called the West Motel, and it was on the west side. And back then, the west side was known as the Dust Bowl.
Boy.
And that's where all the black population, they were living.
Wow,
And we went over there, and sure enough, we got rooms at the West Motel.
Gosh, what a story. My goodness. Well, you know, back in 1981, you had a talk show called Today's Black Woman. How do you compare today's Black woman to the one of back in 1981?
Well, today's Black woman, well, first of all, I didn't have an audience. This was in New York at a studio in Manhattan. And it was basically a talk show format. I interviewed politicians such as Vernon Jordan, Jesse Jackson. I interviewed personalities like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you know, Natalie Cole, Shirley Chisholm. We had community subject matter such as rape, or we had another subject about Black theater and how hard it is to put shows on Broadway. And this was back in the 80s. So, and then I remember being a part of a show. I was Leslie Uggams' understudy in Hallelujah Baby, and that was 1967. And that show was based on what we are experiencing now today. And that is, no matter how far back we go, where we are now, there's still problems.
Yeah,
we still have problems. There's still let's say the elephant in the room. And we know we've come a long way, but we haven't come far enough. And there's got to be some rules and some legislation changed. And I mean from the top, not the bottom, from the top.
Freda, we really appreciate your time. I feel like I could talk for hours.
Forever.
I'd love to hear more stories.
Yeah.
And it's such an honor. It's an honor to have you on our show. And thank you for bringing us all that wonderful music. And you, best of luck to you. And you don't age. It's crazy. We want to know your secret.
Jeez.
Well, I think I have to thank Mama and Daddy. And they're in heaven now, but I have to thank them.
Good genes. Thank you, Freda.
Thank you.
Oh, lovely.
Wonderful.
Isn't she cute?
Yes, it was so sad to hear that story
know.
as well.